Pleasant day to each everyone, especially to you, Attorney Bagwell. My name is Brila, and I'm going to discuss the Article 1183 to Article 1187. First article I'm going to discuss is the Article 1183. Article 1183. Impossible conditions, those contrary to good customs or public policy, and those prohibited by law, shall annul obligation which depends upon them. If the obligation is divisible, the part thereof which is not affected by the impossible or unlawful condition shall be valid. The condition not to do an impossible thing shall be considered as not having agreed upon. All conditions that are impossible and not true can annul not only the condition itself, but the whole contract. Things cannot be done was considered not agreed upon. But if the obligation is divisible, that part thereof is not affected by the impossible or unlawful condition shall be valid. There are two kinds of impossible conditions: the physical impossible conditions and the legally impossible conditions. Physically impossible conditions, when they in the nature of things cannot exist or cannot be done. Ito yung naturally impossible not to happen fulfill. For example, Pedro obliged himself to give 50,000 to Juan if Juan can swim the Pacific Ocean. The given example is clearly impossible not to happen. The second one is the legally impossible condition. Legally impossible condition is when they are contrary to law, moral, good customs, public order, or public policy. Legally impossible condition is not really possible. Means pwede siyang gawin or kayang gawin ng isang tao, pero hindi siya pwedeng gawin because it is against according to the law, moral, good customs, public order, and or public policy. For example, Pedro obliged himself to give Juan 5,000 if Juan will not vote in the incoming senatorial election. Not voting in the incoming senatorial election is legal impossibility for being contrary to public policy. Dahil bukod sa karapatan ng bawat tao bumoto, may mga bansa na mandatory to vote. And one of these countries is Australia. That is according to EIU's Democracy Index for 2019. In Australia, if you do not vote at a state or local government election and you don't have a valid reason, you will be fined $55,000. Apparent failure to vote notices are distributed within 3 months of an electoral event. Now, let us proceed to effects of impossible condition. The first one is conditional obligation void. Impossible conditions annul the obligation which depends upon them. Both the obligation and the condition is void. The reason behind the law is that the obliger knows his obligation cannot be fulfilled. He has no intention to comply with his obligation. For example, Pedro obliged himself to give Juan a 1 million pesos if Juan will jump in the building. Second one is conditional obligation valid. If the condition is negative, that is, not to do an impossible thing, it is disregarded and the obligation is rendered. According to Article 1183, not to do an impossible thing, both obligation and condition is valid. Just disregard the condition because the condition is always fulfilled when it is not to do an impossible thing, so that it is the same as if there were no condition. For example, Juan is to give Pedro 10,000 if Pedro does not swim across the Pacific Ocean. The third one is only the affected obligation void. If the obligation is divisible, the part thereof not affected by the impossible condition shall be valid. So this is partially void. The example is, I will give you 10,000 if you sell my land, and the car if you kill Pedro. In this given scenario, there are two obligations and conditions dahil bawat obligations ay may separate conditions. In the given scenario, ang partially void lang ay ang pagbigay ko ng car na ang condition is to kill Pedro. So the question is, why is it void? Because it is dependent upon an impossible condition, which is specifically the legally impossible, because killing someone is against the law and moral. So it means killing Pedro condition is illegal. That's why na-void yung condition na yon. At partially void lang dahil yung unang condition na magbibigay ng 10,000 if you will sell my land is completely valid. Bakit? Kasi pwede siya or legal possible siya. 4. Only the condition void. if the obligation is pre-existing obligation and therefore does not depend upon the fulfillment of the condition which is impossible for its existence, only the condition is void. Pag ang obligation ginawa na before pa at hindi siya involved doon sa bagong condition at obligation na impossible, valid pa rin yung obligation pero void yung condition. For example, D incurred an obligation in the amount of 10,000 in favor of C. If C later agreed to kill X before D faced him, the condition to kill X is void, but not the pre-existing obligation of D to pay C. Or, obligation na ni D na bigyan ng 10,000 si C kasi ayun yung obligation niya. Kaso biglang si C, gusto niya nang patayin si X. After nung kasunduan nila, doon niya lang sinabi na papatayin niya na si X bago pa siya bayaran ni D. Yan yung condition na sinasabi lang dito na void yung condition, which is papatayin si X kasi example yun ng impossible condition, which is specifically legally impossible. At valid pa rin yung babayaran ni D si C kasi ayun yung kasunduan nila before na wala pang anomalya. So dapat pa rin bayaran ni C si D dahil maayos pa sila nun, nag-usap at obligation niya yun. Article 1184. The condition that some event happen at a determinate time should extinguish in the obligation as soon as the time expire, or as if it has become indubitable that the event will not take place. This article is about the positive condition that some event will happen at a determinate time. For example, Maria obliged himself to give Clara a car if Clara will marry Pedro within this year. The condition in the given scenario is Clara will marry Pedro within this year. From the word will, Clara will marry Pedro. From the previous discussion, we already know the positive, which is usually will do, will give. So the given scenario said, if Clara will marry Pedro within this year, doon mag-uumpisa or take effect yung obligations ni Mara kay Clara na ibigay yung promise or obligation niyang car. But if Clara unable to marry Pedro within this year, the conditions will be extinguished. Why? Dahil ang condition ni Maria ay within this year. At kung hindi nagawa yun ni Clara within this year, then it will expire. Sa pangalawang paragraph, sinabi na as soon as it has become indubitable that the event will not take place, although the time specified has not yet expired. For example, if within this year na yon namatay si Pedro na hindi pa sila nagpapakasal ni Clara, then it is impossible to happen. That means automatically extinguished na yung obligations ni Maria kay Clara because it is indubitable. Let us proceed to Article 1185, which is the opposite of Article 1184. The condition that some event will not happen at a determinate time shall render the obligation effective from the moment the time indicated has elapsed, or it has become evident that the event cannot occur. If no time has been fixed, the condition shall be deemed fulfilled at such time as may have probably been contemplated, bearing in mind the nature of the obligation. Sabi sa article, from the moment the time indicated has elapsed without the event taking place. From the given scenario, Maria obliged himself to give Clara a house and lot if Maria will not marry Pedro within this year. If the year is lapsed na hindi pa pinapakasalan ni Clara si Pedro, from that time, yung obligation ni Maria will be totally effective. Sabi naman sa second paragraph, from the moment it has become evident that the event cannot occur, although the time indicate has not yet elapsed. For example, namatay si Pedro within this year. So kahit hindi pa totally nag-elapse yung indicated time, pero yung obligations ni Maria will be effective that time from the moment na namatay si Pedro. Why? Dahil patay na si Pedro. Obviously, hindi na mangyayari na mapakasalan pa ni Maria si Pedro. Kaya kahit hindi pa nag-elapse, no need to wait na because the event cannot occur or happen anymore. Let us proceed to Article 1186. The condition should be deemed fulfilled when the obliger voluntarily prevents its fulfillment. Number 1. Constructive fulfillment of condition. If the debtor voluntarily prevents the fulfillment of the condition, such condition is deemed fulfilled and the obligation becomes demandable. When we say constructive fulfillment, kusang loob pinigilan ng obliger ang condition, then it will automatically deem fulfilled, like as if nagawa o nangyari yung condition. Number 2. 1. Constructive fulfillment not applicable. The condition is not deemed fulfilled if the debtor prevents its fulfillment in the exercise of lawful right or for justifiable reasons. For example, Donato obliged himself to give a house and lot to Camelo if Camelo marries Teresa. Later, Donato tried to convince Camelo not to marry Teresa because Donato found out that Teresa was the daughter of Camelo's father by another woman. The condition is not deemed fulfilled because the prevention of its fulfillment by the debtor is for lawful purpose. Ano yon? Stopping the marriage between a brother and a sister from taking place, which is considered void. Article 1187. The effects of conditional obligation to give, once the condition has been fulfilled, should retroact to the day of the constitution of the obligation. Nevertheless, when the obligation imposes reciprocal prestations upon the parties, the fruits and the interest during the pendency of condition should be deemed to have been mutually compensated. If the obligation is unilateral, the debtor should appropriate the fruits and interest received. Unless the nature and circumstances of the obligation, it should be inferred that the intention of the person constituting the same was different. In obligation to do and not to do, the courts shall determine in each case the retroactive effect of the condition that has been complied with. What is the effect fulfilled of suspensive becomes effective, and from what day? According to this Article 1187, it shall retroact to the day of the constitution of the obligation. When we say suspensive, it is condition that cause the birth of the obligation. Kapag ang condition ay nangyari, it will cause the obligation the birth effect. It means magiging effective na ang obligation from the moment na ang condition ay na-meet. If hindi na-take or na-meet ang condition, walang birth of obligations dahil hindi ito nagawa. In short, no fulfillment, no obligation. When we say retroactive naman, it has effect from a date in the past before it was approved. For example, on August 1, 2015, Maria promised to give his agricultural to Clara if Clara passes the CPA board examination in October 2015. In this case, it was as if Clara was entitled to the lot on August 1, 2015. Sinabi dito na Maria promised on August 1, 2015 to give his agricultural lot to Clara, but Clara passes the CPA board examination in October 20, 2015. Nung napasa na ni Clara ang CPA board examination niya, which is October 20, 2015, meaning Maria need to fulfill her promise or obligation to Clara, which she need to give the agricultural lot to Clara. From the day na nag-promise si Maria, which is August 1, 2015, hanggang October, kay Maria pa rin yung lote dahil hindi pa nagagawa ni Clara ang kondisyon ni Maria. Pero, nung lumabas na ang result sa board examination ni Clara, noong October 20, 2015, magiging officially own na ni Clara ang lote ni Maria with retroactive effect. Ano yung ibig sabihin nun? As if own na ni Clara ang agricultural lot ni Maria noong August 1 pa lang. Kahit na October 20, 2015 niya pa lang na fulfilled ang condition because it retroact from the time the obligation constitution. It was only suspended because of the condition. To be clear, Clara already owned the lot on August 1, 2015 because the ownership retroacts. Reciprocal obligations. The fruits and interests received during the pendency of the condition shall be deemed to have been mutually compensated. Dito sa reciprocal obligations, there are no retroactive effect. According dito sa article, both of them are obligated to give to each other. Ibig sabihin, parehas silang demandable sa fruits and interest during the pendency of the obligation of the condition. So, they have both obligation to each other. For example, Maria agreed to sell and Clara agrees to buy Maria parcel of land if Clara passes the May 1999 CPA exams. If Clara passes the May 1999 CPA board, the obligation becomes demandable. Clara is entitled to all the interest that is money with which to pay Maria may earn, while Maria is entitled to the fruits which the parcel of land may produce during the pendency of the condition. So, ano yung obligation nila sa isa't isa? Si Maria, which is the seller, to give or to sell the land, while Clara is the buyer to pay. Under this article, hindi na ibibigay yung fruits na mapuproduce sa agricultural land because it will be deemed mutually compensated. So once na na-fulfill na ang condition, kailangan na gawin yung obligation nila sa isa't isa, which Maria need to sell the land kay Clara, while Clara need to pay. So, ang entitled nila is Maria entitled sa fruits, while Clara is entitled sa interest. The next is unilateral obligations. The debtor should keep the fruits and interest unless there was a contrary intent. Nasabi dito na si debtor pa rin yung magmamay-ari o nagmamay-ari ng fruits unless makikitang iba ang kanilang intention or may iba pa silang kasunduan. But in the given scenario, walang ganong klaseng kasunduan. Pero, ano ba yung fruits na tinutukoy ko dito? From the given example, agricultural land yung pinag-uusapan. So, yung mga fruits na pwedeng ma-produce doon yung mga young and adult products of the animals. Maria agreed to give Clara a parcel of land if Clara passes the CPA board exam in May 1999 exams. Pending the happening of the condition, Maria is entitled to the fruits which the land may produce. Maria will deliver only the parcel of land if the condition is fulfilled, unless a contrary intention appears. From the given scenario, as if una ni Clara yung agricultural land. So yung fruits from August to October will be still to Maria, even though as if una ni Clara yung agricultural land noong August because of the Retro Act. But according to Article 1187, if it's unilateral obligations, the fruits and interest received should be appropriated by the debtor. Si Maria lang ang entitled dun sa fruits ng land na pwedeng ma-produce during the pendency of the condition. Simple words, land lang yung pwedeng makuha ni Clara kay Maria after niya ma-fulfill yung condition. And that's all. Thank you for listening.